So, good evening to all of you, and thanks for joining us. Thanks, Shajan and Kiran, for joining us, and thanks to all the audience. Uh, Welcome to the Bespoke Show. This is the 34th edition of the Bespoke Show, and we are just 15 shows away from hitting 50. So, I'll just give you a background of TBS before we proceed with the show today. TBS started off in 2019, and till now we have completed 34 shows and hosted about 100 panelists till now. We do TBS in three formats. We do it in TBS Premier, which is the offline format, which we do in universities and colleges. So we have done in IIT Hyderabad, we have done in Garden City University, Bangalore, Dayanand Sagar University, IFIM Business School, Vanguard Business School, and many, many more. We also host TBS in the online format. We call it TBS Prima, just like the one which we are seeing now, where we get panelists from across the globe. So we have had panelists from New Zealand, from Thailand, from Kenya, and UK, so on. So this removes all the barriers of location and the audience also. So when we do in a college campus, the audience is generally only the students. So when we do online, we can reach across borders. We also have TBS podcast where we take up offbeat topics. So online and offline, we generally take up topics which are industry, academia related or of interest, contemporary topics. But when we take up podcast, we take up offbeat topics. So we have done something on graphology recently. We have done paranormal. We have done hypnotherapy and so on. So we take up these topics on podcast, and these are available on Google Podcast, Spotify, and many other podcast platforms. And we are now about to launch a TBS Junior. The first show will be on 7th June. So we will be talking to school kids also on obviously topics of interest to them. So that's the new format coming up from TBS. I and Asha jointly host these shows. So I'll just give you a quick background about both of us. Asha, would you like to talk about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm the founder of a marquee brand consulting firm called Brand Horizon. Formerly, I was the managing director of a European multinational. I'm also on the board of Toyota Financial Services and a guest speaker in B Schools.
Yeah. So about me, I write. I have written 2 books. Let me show you both my books. So this was my first book called It's Official Stupid. And this is my second book, which I recently launched. This is Bihar Ki Beti. And I'm currently writing my third book, which should be out by early 2021. I also write bylines in various media publications and various management periodicals of universities. That's about me. I'll continue writing, I think. And about the guests for today, I don't think they require an introduction, first of all. But just as a protocol, let me read out their profiles. So we have with us Kiran D'Souza. Kiran has been running for about 10 years now. And since shifting to Manali after Sparthalon, a 246-kilometer race to Greece, he has been trail running for about 4 years. He came out 8th at the Yading Sky Race, 7th at the Eiger Ultra, and 21st at the Dumont Blanc Marathon. He also represented India at the Trail World Championship in 2017, 18, and 19. Welcome to the show, Kiran.
Thank you so much for having me, Sid.
Our second panelist, Mr. Shajan Samuel, currently works as Vice President at Aptec Limited. He is an ultra runner, has ran 300 milers in a span of 6 months with a best time of 28 hours and was a podium finisher. He came in 17th in the 36 hours Bangalore Stadium run. Shajan has completed some of the toughest ultras in India in Ladakh, Ran of Kutch, and Malnad Ultra, and has featured in the Indian Book of Records. He also ran the Singapore and Berlin Marathon and has now qualified for the Chicago Marathon this year. Shajan has cumulatively run about 30,000 kilometers in last 8 years. 30,000 kilometers. I was just calculating. I think I've not even driven around for 30,000 kilometers in so many years. Amazing. So welcome, Shajan. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Asha.
Thank you.
So first question that comes across my mind before we get into detailing. I mean, what makes you run, Kiran and Shajan? So maybe we can start with Kiran and then Shajan can add on.
All right. So for me, running was something I just came across when I was in college, and I picked up the sport mainly out of the interest, out of the fact that, you know, it's a very simple sport to get into. As a college student, I did not require much gear, right? I didn't have to invest in any fancy gear, unlike other sports. Like I used to play a lot of basketball, I used to do a lot of swimming, but even with swimming, you've got to pay the fee for monthly fees, and for basketball, you'd have to buy the balls, or like you have some investments. But running for me it started off that way just because of the simplicity. And for the first 5 years of running, I had, I think, 3 pairs of shoes, 1 pair of shorts, and I'd never bought a t-shirt because I used to get so many race t-shirts. So I think that's the reason I started running. Why I've stuck with it for so long, I guess, I'll need someone else to sort of decode it for me. But for me, it's just the fact that I get to, travel around to new places in the world. The fact that I get to run such, long distances on my own 2 feet, and it's been pretty interesting to me. And of course, now after 10 years of running, I have to admit that I do enjoy it, and I enjoy putting myself through all the pain and getting up every morning and running. It makes me feel complete and fulfilled.
Great. Shajan?
See, unlike Kiran, who took to running like a fish to water, I was never genetically encoded to play any sport. The closest I've ever come to play any sport when I was substitute goalkeeper for my school team, but I never got to touch the ball because the main goalkeeper was that good. So at 37 years, when I was going through a midlife crisis, battling a lot of issues like low self-esteem and many other things, I just took off to running like off the cuff. It was just off the fly, and I could barely run 500 meters, and I was weighing around 92 kilos. So at the age of 40 years, I consciously reduced my weight. I reduced 21 kilos in 3 months, and then went on to adopt a very healthy lifestyle and sustainable lifestyle. So I transitioned into long distance running at that point of time at the age of 40, when most people resign to their fate. Running for me gives me freedom. It keeps me free. I have long conversations between my body and my mind. We keep talking to each other, and the day I don't run, I really feel miserable. So it keeps me inward focused. It keeps me happy. It keeps me grounded, because running is a metaphor. Is always about staying on the ground. So it gives me pure joy, and running is a very natural form of human evolution. It doesn't require any extraordinary skills. I mean, all your form and technique and everything else comes when you reach threshold point. So it gives me joy, it gives me happy, and it's a sport which can also radiate and resonate happiness among a lot of other people as well.
So it was initially difficult, and now it has become a habit. It's a force of habit for you.
Yeah. Without the day I don't run, I just feel miserable. I can't do anything without running. I think
How
running
have
is
you
my
been managing
wife
during
is
the
my second love
lockdown?
now. I have pushed my wife down the ladder. I've told her, you are my second love. I can divorce my wife, but I'll not divorce running.
Asha?
Thank you, Sid. Running, like any other sport, is also not just a physical game, it's also a mental game, right? So how do you manage to stay calm and make sure that you don't hit the wall or lose the steam just before the finishing line? Maybe we can
Uh,
start with
so
Kiran.
for before I reach the start line of any race, there are months leading up to it where I do a lot of training and I put in the work. And the all the training that I do helps me with being confident at the start line. So I know and I trust the work I've put in, and when I'm at the start line, I am excited to get going. So I get the confidence from the work I've put in. From there are always going to be jitters. You're always going to have a little bit of nervousness and a little bit of excitement, and that is good. You want to have a little bit of all that when you're at the start line. And during a race, the idea is for me is to be. I usually have a proper race plan, and for me, I try to stick to it as much as I can. And for most of the long races that I do, I have a sort of like a target for 70% of the race. So if I'm doing like a 100-kilometer race, I have a target for the first 70 odd kilometers. And if I reach that target, I reach that particular mark in the target time, not faster, not slower. I have to make it in that target time. That gives me the confidence for the next 30K to sort of push myself. And that's how I sort of stay controlled during the whole race. So I have small goals during the whole race leading up to my main target, which is just before the finish, around 2-3 hours in a at least 100K kind of race. And as I'm meeting those targets, I keep getting more and more confident. I keep getting more excited. And the idea is not to, for me, it's not to make it to all these points before the target time or after the target time. It has to be as close as possible to those target times. Because if I'm going too fast, then I know I'm going to pay for it later. If I'm going too slow, I know there are some issues going on with me. I'm struggling, and that's why I'm going too slow. But if I'm making it, on the dot, then I know that things are going smooth, and it keeps me happy. It keeps me excited, and yeah, the last 30 odd kilometers or the last 2-3 hours of a race is when I don't think about anything and I just run. I just try to run as quickly as I can to the finish line.
Interesting. Sounds like a strategy that you work on with smaller goals, not to get stressed out, right?
Exactly. So I break down, again, I'll give an example of a 100K race. You always break down the race either into like 2-hour targets or 15-20 kilometer targets. And I keep trying to meet all those targets.
Great. Shajan, do you have similar strategies, or do you have something unique that you follow to make sure that you don't hit the wall?
See, the analogy of long distance running can be applied to any facet of life. See, ultra running, unlike your 10K, 21, or even 42K, is a very cruel sport. There is no fanfare, there is no cheer girl, there is no euphoria, and you can never see the finish line. So you have to keep pushing yourself, and at some point of time during the race, your body will give up because your body only has finite capacity. But the human mind has the power to subvert the body because the human mind has got infinite possibility. And for me, it's about that glorious head rush to dive deep into the unknown. And that feeling is incredible. So most of us stay in our comfort zone. And when we step out of our comfort zone is where amazing things happen. So in every long distance running, 161 kilometer and beyond I'm talking about, for me, that technically qualifies to be a ultra running, not your 50K or 80K. So every ultra running or 161 kilometer, I have had periods of time when it just felt like quitting and giving up. The body couldn't take it anymore. But some inner voice keeps telling you, keep pushing, one step at a time, one step at a time. And some unknown power overpowers you and then keeps pushing you forward. And every time I sign for ultra running, I tell myself, this is the last. I'm not going to sign for any ultra running. What is the point in putting my body to severe torture? I won't run anymore. But immediately after I cross the finishing line, I immediately go and sign up for one more race. It's addictive. It's a pure mind game. It's a pure mind game. And the mind is such a powerful, human species have been bestowed with such a potent weapon, the mind, but rarely we use that mind. So when we unlock the mind, amazing things can happen. So any physical distance can be conquered. So once we condition our mind, every distance becomes small.
Interesting. The more you stress, the more resilient it gets, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Very interesting. Sid?
Yeah. So taking a cue from what Kiran said, that in the initial part of the race, he assesses whether you're going too slow or you're going too fast, and you adjust accordingly. So do you at any point of time get anxious at the beginning of the race or in the first few stages when you're assessing? What about anxiety factor in ultra runners?
For me, it does happen. I have been through situations where I've started the race, and like there are some races I've run, like ultra races where there are like 2,000 people, and the first 1-2 hours of the race I'm just sort of like overtaking people because it's crowded on the trails, and so I usually end up meeting those first targets a little later or like slower than planned. It does give me a little bit of anxiety, and I'm a little worried, and it does happen. But in the end, I know that the race is long, and I just try to I can rush into it and blow up very quickly, but I have to always think of the bigger picture because the
you
overall
guys also
goal.
Get butterflies.
Yeah. I have it before every race. Not as much as it used to be in the past, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
How do you combat against physical injuries that are likely to happen when you set out on a race, like an ankle sprain or a cramp or a runner's knee? You obviously would want to take enough precautions against those. How do you actually prepare for that?
So see, injury will happen more than it happening during a race. The chances are it'll happen in training, because it's, at least for me, it's in training where I put in all the hard work. The race is relatively easy for me because I have already done all the preparation, and it's like an exam. You've done all the work and you're just putting it out there on the race day. So race days are usually relatively easy for me. It's not hard because the hard work has all been done in the months leading up to the event. So from an injury perspective, it's the chances of you getting injured is more likely during a training, because
Okay.
that's when you're putting, like I'm putting in 100-mile week, I'm putting 200-kilometer weeks, and living in Manali, I do a lot of elevation gain. So when I'm doing anywhere between 100 miles, 200-kilometer weeks, I'm always touching over 10,000 meters of elevation gain. So because of all this variation, naturally, the chance of me getting injured is more in during training, and that's where you got to act smart. You need to plan out your training smartly. And I have reached 100 miles, 200-kilometer weeks after many years of running, right? Also now I've been in lockdown 2 months, hardly run. The last 2 weeks I've been running, I've not crossed 80 kilometers a week yet. So that's because I'm building up slowly again. So I don't want to get injured. That's why I take all these precautions. During the race, the chances of you getting injured are high because you're naturally pushing yourself fast at a high intensity. But the fact that you've put in the work reduces those chances a lot. And if you get injured, it's really tough luck. Either you take a call on continuing, depending on how you're injured, or you just take the smart decision of pulling out of the race, depending on your injury.
Thank you. Shajan, you said actually started running in middle age during your middle age. So did that pose any challenges for you to cope with the challenges in terms of getting
I
getting
did
your body ready for it?
I did everything the wrong way. Okay, I went purely by trial and error method. I only in the recent part I've understood the science behind running. I've understood the importance of strength training, building your core, ensuring mobility training, and also getting your nutrition right. For anybody who wants to get into the sport, I recommend that they hire a good training coach. Okay, it is not that if you run every day, if you keep running, your running efficiency will improve. That's a myth. Okay, you need to ensure good recovery. You need to ensure that you're having the right food, right sort of hydration. Plus, you need to work on your strength. You need to correct imbalances in your body and minimize injury, because once you're injured, then it's very difficult to stage a comeback. So the only way you can mitigate this sort of injuries is by first understanding your body. Because most people don't understand the body. It's like a Mercedes Benz engine. Our body is an engineering marvel. Okay, and we should know exactly where our body stands, what is our lipid profile, what is our hemoglobin count, what is our vitamin D, vitamin C level. Analyze that, do a blood test, and then meet a sports consultant or a doctor and hire a running coach. Because it's always better to mitigate injuries and work on your real form. So I did everything the wrong way. I will not advocate a single person to go through the journey which I have done. Okay, but anybody wanting to really take up recreational running as a sport, please hire a training coach. Please go through the process, very comprehensive and very holistic. It's not just like getting up in the morning and running, because if your technique is not right, you can get injured. And if you're not working on your strength and your core, then you can have a problem.
So the right technique is the key to getting things right
Yes,
on a sustainable basis.
absolutely. Yes.
When we talk about injury, especially for people who are taking up running newly or aspiring runners, so which are the weak points that require support initially? Is it the spinal area, or is it the knees and joints, or is it the chest area, or how does one go about it?
So I think there's no right answer, because we all are very different. All our lifestyles are very different, and the kind of lifestyles we live is very different. So I think there is no part of the body that's more susceptible to getting injured. Naturally, you're running on your legs, so your knees and ankles and hips get a lot of the load. So you do, I mean, it does increase the chances. But if you're someone who's sitting a lot and running once in a way and sitting down a lot all day, so you'll have weak glutes, you'll have weak lower back. So I think it's, again, like how Shajan mentioned earlier, right? Like the technique, the strength training, all of these things play an important role. You got to work on all aspects of your body. if you have a weak lower back, you have a weak upper back, you'll slouch and run. If you can't hold your neck up straight, you'll put your neck down and run. You will not look forward. If your knees are weak, you'll not be able to take all the pounding that you're putting on it. And most of us are running in the cities on pavements, right? So naturally it's harder on the joints as well. So I don't think there's one particular part of the body that he can get injured more. It just varies from person to person and the kind of lifestyles we live. But I guess, like Shajan mentioned earlier, right? Working on the whole body is important, and working on every aspect of the body. So strength training, a lot of stretching, these are the things that will help you a lot, not just simple running.
Right. Shajan, you said it's not just like getting up in the morning and start running. So aspiring runners should not do that. So how does one go about? So what should an aspiring runner do? Should he go for some kind of exercises first and then start running, or how is it?
So that all depends upon that individual. Okay, whether he has got a genetically encoded sporting DNA in him or her, as a case might be. And my first suggestion is that understand your body, because the bodies are very unique and they are conditioned and aligned very differently from each other. Understand your body, do a comprehensive blood test. I did a comprehensive blood test probably at the age of 42 years. I understood what exactly in my body needs some sort of balancing and alignment. Okay, so you need to understand the opening balance in your body, where your body stands. But everybody today is under peer pressure. Too fast, too soon. You see somebody running, ultra running, they also want to get into this mad rush of bragging rights. I want to put up my medal on Facebook and say I did ultra because my friend has done ultra.
Yeah.
But this is not a competition, man. This is not about you versus somebody else. This is about you versus you. You need to be better than what you were yesterday. So running, you should pick up running only if you really enjoy it, if you're passionate about it. Okay. And you have to go through that rigmarole of building strength, mobility exercise, hire a coach, because a coach understands it, okay, and the science behind it. You have to go through the drill. Not just picking up your shoes and running in the morning, because then you can be injured, you can have a problem. A lot of things you are seeing everywhere in the paper now. People are dying because they are trying too soon, too fast. Okay, and you don't have to run every single day. Nobody does like that. I run only 3 to 4 days a week. I take 1 day. So the most important, crucial component in running is recovery. You need to stay away from running for at least 1 day. You need to have 7 hours of sleep, because your brain is directly connected to your body. And if you don't have proper sleep, then you can go for a toss. So you have to understand the science behind running. It's not just getting up and running. The nutrition, the hydration, the periodic intervention from a sports physiotherapist, all this play important role in ensuring that runner stays ahead of the learning curve and is a better version of his or herself the next day.
How much gap do you generally recommend, Shajan, between races? So when you take up ultras, what gap do you maintain?
I think you have to cherry pick your races. There are in India, according to me, we have 1 million people who run. Okay, India, we have been a late bloomer to the party. And there is around 25 races every weekend. So you multiply that by into 4, that is 100 in a month, into 12, it is 1,200 races. Everybody is signing up for everything. You don't run like that. You have to cherry pick your race. You have to be very selective. What you want to run. If you want to do a full marathon, you should do only 2 or 3 in a year. If you want to do ultra, do only 2 in a year. You have to give adequate spacing between ultra runs. Recovery is very important. Your body is not a machine that you can just abuse it, and over a period of time people who do that, it catches up and you can have a problem. So be very selective. And what is your objective? You want to qualify for the Boston, or you want to be an ultra runner? That decision you have to make. You can't do everything.
Asha?
Kiran, just taking it forward from what Shajan was mentioning about, it's more a passion, right? You're not competing against anybody else. You're only competing against yourself. So I guess there is a self-motivation behind every sports person, and so for running. So would you look for monetary, does this give you any monetary benefits at all? And would you look for any kind of support from the government or encouragement as the other sports are getting, or you're just indifferent to that?
I cannot be indifferent to that because I run full time and this is my
Oh, okay.
job.
Okay.
So I have to make a living out of the sport somehow.
Okay. Okay.
So no, I do think like, so ultra running as well. There was a time when it was not, actually there was never a time when it was not competitive. It's always
Okay.
been competitive. And if you're you're racing globally, people on the highest levels, a lot of the guys are full-time athletes, or even if they're part-time athletes, the kind of work schedule they have is not necessarily like a 9 to 5 Monday to Saturday jobs. They have shifts, or they manage it that way, and it's a choice to make, at least a lot of the top guys. So people are competing in ultra running globally. That's how you have that people who are running 6-hour, 5-minute kind of 100K times, and guys like Killian and Jim, and all these guys who are running globally. At like Jim Walmsley, he ran for the US Olympic trials. He ran a 2:10 marathon, and he's a 100-mile runner. So to run at a level of, at the highest levels, people are running full time. So at least for me, I do need to figure out a way to make money out of the sport, because this is what I do for a living.
So how does that work? Does it work through sponsorships, or does the government support this sport?
So in India, there is no, right now we, like Shahjan mentioned, right? We are boomers in the running scene. So even in this space, we are pretty late. We are behind many years compared to many other countries. So no, so there is no right answer to this. For me, it works through sponsorship. It works through doing some talks. It works through it's multiple things. Trying to make a video for a brand, trying to do a talk for a brand, or I did a talk at Mica last year, and small things like this. Being sponsored by a brand. Some races I get invited to, and they pay for me to come there. So it's a lot of different things, because it's not a mainstream sport like
Right.
many of the other sports, right? So it's all haphazard. From the
Right.
government's perspective, in the last 3 years, the AFI has started to support the sport, where at least to the extent that they're sending people from India, runners from India, to represent India at various world championships globally, whether it's the 100 kilometers or the 24 hours or the trail running world championships. So that's the extent of the support that we have from the government, I guess. Yeah, it's through the AFI, the Athletic Federation of India, and yeah.
That's good. Shahjan, your take on this? Do you think India as a nation should be doing something to encourage this sport in relation to the kind of encouragement that the other sports is getting?
See, long distance running is a very unglamorous sport. It's not a flamboyant sport like your 10-kilometer dash or your marathon and things like that. So I think there is a lot of lobbying we need to do. We need to really pitch hard to the government of India to endorse this sport firmly as part of Asian Games or as part of your Olympics. It is due time. It is high time that ultra running is recognized, because the amount of hard work and preparation which an ultra runner worth his salt does is unimaginable. Because just for that 100 kilometers race on the race day, the amount of hours of training and preparation they do, one can't even fathom. So people like Kiran D'Souza have been the flag bearer and torch bearer of ultra running in India. In the last 2 years, we are really shining. We have made it to the World Championship. We have won bronze last year in the World Trail Championship. So we are slowly and largely getting there, but it's not enough. So we need a shot in the arm. Of course, government needs to come forward. We have some private organizing bodies who are really thrusting upon this. But I don't need the money. On the riverside, I spend around 4 lakh rupees on training on every year annually on running. So I don't need the money. I don't run for the money. But there are so many capable, talented ultra runners in India, and they just need a platform. And I'm sure that if you are able to give them the platform, the time is not far when India will win a medal at the highest level.
Yeah, not just
So,
the platform, probably also the financial support to be able to sustain the family while
Absolutely.
they
Yes,
spend
yes.
time running.
The amount of money which is spent. See, we do not have a sport. We do not have a sports infrastructure. Why India lacks, if you compare to China and if you compare to India, because we do not have even proper playgrounds in our school. Everything starts with the school. We need to ensure that proper physical infrastructure is done at school. And mindset. बच्चा अगर खेलने जाएगा तो माँ बाप बोलेगा खेल कूद के क्या मिलेगा. If you look at PT Usha, she missed the bronze by a whisker. Why? Because she did not have proper running shoes. Or Milka Singh. So the part of the matter is that we need to set up physical infrastructure. Lot of money has to be spent on nutrition, hydration, proper shoes and things like that. The government of India has to come forward. We need to lobby hard with the government. I don't know who will do it, but somebody has to do it.
Point, food for thought. Sid?
So for one thing is, at least, the trail running space, trail running has come under the World Athletics. That's the governing body for athletics, right? The IAAF, it used to be called that. So from next year onwards, all the events that are organized, the trail running world championships that are going to be organized, it's going to be done under the IAAF or the World Athletics. So that's a big step in the right direction globally.
Interesting that there's an awareness and probably more efforts need to be put in to take this to higher levels.
Yep, with time, it's growing really fast, the sport.
Interesting. Sid?
I was reading one research publication which spoke about the positive impact or benefits of running, in fact, ultra running, in controlling anxiety, in controlling depression, anger, and confusion, and so on. So, at a personal level, Shajan, since you said you started off late, what benefits did you see after you took up this, apart from weight loss that you mentioned earlier?
I think my entire personality got a shot in the arm. So I think I'm more a focused guy. I have managed to calm myself down, and it has given a complete new dimension to my perspective about life. So I strongly believe that life is all about enjoying. Life is about looking at the small things and being happy about it. So running has been a great got great impetus to my life. My life was completely going astray. It was not going in any direction at all. Absolutely aimless, like a ship without a rudder. Running has brought me back on track. It has helped me to stay focused. It has made me happy. It has given unadulterated joy. So I owe this to running. So I am absolutely indebted to running. That running has, and I'm some of the finest people I've met. It's a very unifying sport, and the community of people which you get to meet in running, and our friends for lifetime. Okay, the sort of people I met on the racetrack, they are friends for life. So no other sport you will be able to build a community. The running community is a very very close bonded community. It has given me a lot of happiness.
Coming to the nutrition aspect, Shajan, what do you recommend? Do you follow a standard plan, or do you think it's individual specific again? Because we see a lot of advice coming from nutritionists.
So it is individual specific. One size doesn't fit all. Our bodies are very unique. It is tailored and structured very differently. Anybody who wants to embrace a healthy lifestyle, I will tell them that please ensure it is sustainable. Why people lose weight and gain weight immediately is because they don't follow the process. You have to orchestrate and follow a structured process. It's not about weight losing. If you are obsessed with that, I want to lose weight, then it's gone. So that's a wrong yardstick. So I think even before you want to get into an healthy lifestyle, meet a nutritionist. Meet somebody who has got specialized knowledge in that particular subject. And whatever lifestyle you adopt, it has to be sustained. So basic fundas is that you need 7 hours of sleep. Absolutely no negotiable. We have seen during the lockdown period that 40% of Indians are sleeping after 12 a.m. and sleeping at 1 a.m. That's the wrong time to sleep. You have to be in the bed by 10 o'clock. Get up at 4 o'clock. This is early to bed, early to rise. Our grandfathers and grandmothers lived for 100 years. Why? They never had junk food. They never had processed and packaged food. We just go and buy Maggi. In fact, Maggi's sales has gone up. The trajectory has gone northward for Lay's Magic Masala. We are just gorging on junk food. We don't understand the science of nutrition at all. India now is slowly, inching to beat US as the most obese country in the world. We pack Lahir Kurkures for breakfast for our kids. So anything packaged, processed, refined oil, trans fat, you should avoid. Best have homemade food. Drink a lot of water. Stay away from aerated drinks. Smoking is a strict no. You smoke, you increases your chance of heart attack by 50%. So the old mantra grandfathers and grandmothers used to follow. Please follow that. And we have become so. And the more money you get, the more lazy you become. Because then you will have a chauffeur-driven car. You will be taking the lift. You will have an air-conditioned office. You will have an air-conditioned room. No mobility at all. And we go and sit in front of a desktop for 10 hours. And then, you know what is the most common disease? No, lower back pain after common cold. And then we have cardiac arrest. The cardiac arrest is not something which happens all of a sudden. It's a compounded thing. It's happening over a period of time. I'll just give an example to illustrate my point. You buy a vehicle, and then the vehicle has got a capacity of 25 liters. If you put 30 liters of oil in that, the tank overflows. A body has a capacity of 25 liters. If you 40 liters, it doesn't overflow. The waistline goes expanding and accommodates that extra fat. So any extra fat is cholesterol. So you have to understand that nutrition plays a very important role to stay fit. So you may run for 100 kilometers and then you go to the gym, you exercise for 30 minutes, you burn 600 calories. On the way, you have a McDonald's burger and you have a cappuccino. You neutralize. So you gain nothing, you lost nothing. So what's the point of going to the gym? So nutrition is the key.
Kiran, what do you recommend? What do you have for nutrition, and what do you recommend for aspiring runners?
For run during a run or generally?
Generally.
Okay. So generally, I think I try to keep things very simple. And for me, I don't get into any specific diets. I try to eat what's available seasonally from things I can get from the market down my house, as fresh as possible and as much variety as possible. So I'm lucky to live in a place like Manali where I get access to a lot of things right out of the fields pretty much. So I try to use a lot of that. So I do eat a lot of rice because I don't do roti so much. I love rice. So I do a lot of rice, whether morning, afternoon and evening. But I do variety in that also. I'll do red, I'll do white, I'll do brown, I do variety that way. So I think trying to adding a lot of variety to your diet is important, and eating things as fresh as possible. Many years back, I had stopped a lot of junk food, like McDonald's and KFC was something I stopped over 5 years ago. Like, I mean, back then, even then, I never had too much, but over 5 years, I've probably just had these things a couple of times. So no fast foods for me as such. I try, even when I'm traveling a lot, I try to stick to as many things that are fresh and things that I can cook at home, in the house, cook myself. So I try to keep it simple that way. And I also understand it's not easy, but I think if you are, conscious about what you eat, I think that's the first step at least. And then you can think about a diet and how to follow. First, getting very conscious about what you eat. Thinking 10 times, when you're having 2-3 packets of chips for a meal, or you're placing an order on Zomato for some food, So and during this lockdown, I started doing many things at home itself, like baking my own bread and own ginger beer and we make gulab jamuns at home, like basically doing everything at home itself. So trying to control a lot of what we eat. Yeah.
Interesting. And what about during the race?
During the race, again, I think during the race is very specific. Everyone's very different. For me, it took me a good 6 years, I think, to sort of come to a point where I understood what I need for myself during a race. And it took me a lot of practice as well. It just didn't happen overnight in 6 years, right? Like, I worked at it. Every race, if you go back to my results back in 2014 and 13 and 15, most of the races I struggled in were because of stomach issues, because either I tried something new, or I wasn't used to what I was doing during the race, or I was not doing enough calories, or I was doing too much calories. Since 2016, 2017, I have come to a place where I understand what I need. Now I know exactly what I need for almost any race up to 15, 16 hours. I'm comfortable with my diet, with my nutrition. And it's something that I've practiced, and I still practice even though I know I'm comfortable, I still practice it during training. I think for anyone, the first suggestion would be to start fooling around with what you eat during training. Practice a lot of gels, practice a lot of solid food, practice liquid food, practice everything. Have anything, even if it sounds stupid, but practice it and get an idea of what works for you, and then try to apply that in a race. Maybe the race will go good, maybe it won't go good. If it doesn't go good, you learn from it. If it goes well, you know that's what works for you. Another thing that what I have, at least so I can let you know what I do during a race, right? What I do during a race is, again, a lot of variety. I don't stick to one type of product. I do one gel every hour, one liquid uh, water with some run during, so that has enough calories in it. This is a standard, so I get about 380 calories from this, and a little bit of solid food every hour. Now, if the weather is hot, I end up increasing my liquid intake. If the weather is cold, I decrease the liquid, increase the solids and the gels. So that's how I play around with my nutrition during a race. And I know this is what works for me, and I start this from the first hour itself. And this is what I do during the whole race.
Interesting. Ashraf?
What's the pace of running that you maintain, Kiran?
So this varies, right? I'm running in the mountains, and I'm running like steep up mountains where I could be running at 20 minutes a kilometer sometimes, because it's so steep. It's very steep, right? But then there are times when I'm on the other side of the mountain coming down, and I could be running like 3 minutes 30 seconds a kilometer. So
you do it alone, or you're with teams?
So in training, so I live on my own in Manali, and all my training is done on my own. Okay. The only company I have is usually some dogs and cows and sheep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Shahjan, earlier you were mentioning about aspiring runners should be having a coach to train them professionally. Are there enough coaching platforms in India for aspiring runners?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. We have got a lot of seasoned campaigners. According to me, Mumbai, Bangalore, Calcutta, Delhi. These are the four major metros are a natural habitat for runners. Lot of talent is there. Plus, a lot of seasoned coaches are there. A lot of coaches do full time coaching as well. So they need to identify aspiring runners need to identify a coach of their choice, depending upon logistics, depending upon what their objective is all about, and intervention of a coach is imperative. There is no option for that at all, because with times one has the key is to remain injury free, because once you are injured, then it is going to be a long haul.
Right.
And the problem is people don't understand the distinction between a niggle and a pain. Right. Or an injury. They think a niggle is a injury and an injury is a niggle. So the distinction, the demarcation between all the three, they don't understand. They push their injury little too far, then it can aggravate the problem. So I have seen from my experience, a lot of people pushing the envelope a little too hard and then falling flat. Coaching is hiring a good coach is very important.
So is the coaching something that's a fixed time frame before you actually start to do it on your own, or do you think the coach should be available all through your running journey over the years?
Not necessary. You can hire the coach for a finite period of time, say for 3 months, 6 months, or you can hire for a particular competition. So you're planning for a full marathon, you need to plan for at least 3 months in advance. And it depends upon what is your objective, what is the commercials, the logistics. You have to look at various aspects, but hiring a coach and is an imperative. It's no more an option.
Okay.
Very interesting and inspiring talk. Maybe I'm sure our audience would love to hear about your most memorable runs, from both of you.
Okay, so for me, it's hard to pinpoint on one run, mainly because I have been fortunate enough to run at many beautiful places. So I think every run I have a different takeaway. I have a different experience, but uh, I mean, it's hard for me to pinpoint, like, because, and also trail running, right? Like, I end up running in such beautiful locations, whether, last year running over Table Mountain, or running over in the wadis in Oman. So, all these are such beautiful locations. So it's hard for me to pinpoint uh, one specific race that's memorable. But a couple of races do have a special place in my heart for me would be Sparathlon, mainly because that was one event where I feel I gave my 100% in terms of uh, not dropping out or not giving up, and just pushing myself, and mentally that's the hardest I've ever had to push myself, so I'm very proud of myself because of that. And another one would have to be a race in the Chamonix Valley in the Alps, because if you guys have watched the Tour de France, running around in the Alps it has the exact same feeling. Like any race there, you have hundreds and hundreds of supporters lining up the streets, and you should just check out some of the videos on YouTube. It's really beautiful, and the experience and the support you get over there is just next level. So one of the races in the Alps for sure as well.
Awesome. Shajan?
Yeah, so like as Kiran said, that it's very difficult to pinpoint and say that this particular race was memorable, because every run has been memorable. But two such races come into my mind, which is something a story which I can tell to my grandchildren, at some point of time in my life. So one is that Run of Kutch run, where there is no network connectivity, and it's a very complex run. So the complexity and the challenge just varies, after every 5 kilometers. So they give you a GPS, and you have to follow the dotted line, and you have to run. And in different terrain, different climatic conditions, different type of weather, and things like that. So at one point of time, my GPS malfunctioned, and I got absolutely stranded. Absolute desolate place. They gave me a distress whistle, which I start blowing. Then my lungs only stop functioning. Not a single soul inside, no dog inside, and it has a hard cutoff time, and I was losing considerable amount of time. I lost 4 hours, and it came to a stage where I was going to press the panic button, and somehow I managed to find my way and come back into the race. But that race taught me one thing: survival skills. I think everybody in their lifetime has to pack their bag and get lost in the wilderness. Just pack your bag. Just don't buy a ticket to any place, because when you get lost in the wilderness, what happens? You discover yourself. So I discovered myself. So there's some facet of my personality which otherwise was hidden inside. It came on the surface in that race. And my second memorable is, of course, Basin Sports Ennur Ultra, Bamboo Ultra. I was coming back to Bangalore, and I thought, what is the best way to celebrate my return to Bangalore? So I thought I'll run a 161 kilometers. I've never done it before. The maximum I run is 84 kilometers. And I could do that 161 kilometers, which effortlessly, without any problem. The next day after the race, the same day I went to office. It was a massive leap of faith for me, that here is somebody who was not run 500 meters when I started off in my running sojourn. Here I'm doing 161 kilometers with absolute ease. So once your mind accepts you, and once you start embracing pain, see, pain is not something which you have to despise. Pain is something which you have to relish. So when you start relishing pain, when you make pain your companion, and when you open up your mind is like a parachute. It functions only when it opens. Then nothing in this world is impossible.
I think running also gives you a lot of time, as you rightly said, for introspection. So that's self-discovery.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I plan all my strategy in running only. All my strategy, whatever marketing strategy, whatever is my organization strategy, everything I plan in running. So I keep talking to myself. So it is a great sport for reflection, for introspection, for knowing yourself. And if you look at some of the runners, the CEO of Tata himself is a marathon runner. The CEO of Viacom is a runner. So it's now, and people at the age of 40 plus, they take up running, because they have a lot of fights with the wife now. So they need something to fall in love with. So that is the time they take up running.
So is it true that there is a correlation between people who are already successful as corporate professionals or entrepreneurs, and then they take up running? And I think these are interrelated again, finally. Is that true, Shajan?
No, not necessarily. So I was not that. I don't consider myself as a successful person in the professionally. See, there is a B and there is a D, right? What is a B? You know, the B is birth, and what is the D? Is a death. And between B and D, there is a C. Question is, what are you doing with your C? So when my body is lowered in the grave, nobody will say he was a vice president of Aptech Limited, but people may say he was a great runner. So the point is, what you are doing between 9 to 6 is not important. That doesn't define you. What you are doing beyond 9 to 6 is what defines you. So running defines a person. It gives a person a new meaning and makes the life completely meaningful. So a completely failure person professionally picks up running, and then the running can completely bring a new dimension to their life. Not necessarily that successful people only run. That is not true. I think on the contrary, people are not successful in their professional life, they pick up running, and then automatically their professional life also swings back onto track.
Right, makes sense. Healthy mind in a healthy body.
Yeah.
So Shahjan was saying, sometime in your life, you have to get into wilderness to be able to discover yourself. So I think that's a very profound statement. And for Shahjan, that has been the driving force behind running. And for Kieran, running is a living, it's a passion, it's his life. But what's common for both is running is symbolic of positivity towards life. They look at running as a passion. It's a means to discover oneself. It's never a competition. It's something that brings in unadulterated joy. It brings friends for life. And the gratification and the ecstasy that they feel when they reach the finishing line is absolutely priceless. We have read success stories of runners in books, but today we have had this exciting opportunity of a face-to-face interaction with two successful runners. It's been very exciting, incredible insights. Thank you both Shahjan Samuel and Kieran D'Souza for sparing your valuable time. Wish you both great health and many more miles of running. On behalf of Sid Balega, TBS and myself, thank you once again for spending time and speaking to us on this show.
Thank you so much for having us, Sid,
so
Asha, and to everyone who joined in as well. It was lovely chatting with you all.
Thank you for all the audience who joined us.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Have a great week ahead.
All right.
Thank you.
Stay safe, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.